In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes I made in my Tiny Epic Cthulhu playthrough video. So let's get into this. Welcome to Solitary RPG. In this video, I am going to discuss the 5 rules I made mistakes on in my how to set up and play Tiny Epic Cthulhu video. We're going to discuss the rules, and then we're going to take a few more sample plays so that I can provide a clear example of how to play the game. First rule I want to talk about is when you translate pages of the Necronomicon and you start filling up the columns and rows. When you complete a column or a row, you take the associated chaos tentacle that goes with it and you place that in the discard mat. The second rule I want to talk about is when tentacles become accursed on your temperance track. The fear, rage, and greed tentacles go on the Shambler's mat, but when your chaos tentacles become accursed, they actually go back into the general supply and you lose them from the game. The only way they're going to come back is if you land on the action that lets you take from the general supply and put in the discard mat, or as you translate pages of the Necronomicon. The next rule I want to talk about is when your investigator moves to a location that has shamblers on it, you need to pull tentacles from the bag equal to the number of shamblers and resolve them either by placing them on the Great Old Ones card or placing them on your investigator's card. This is the one way your temperance tracks can become accursed because you're mandated to do this. You have to do it. So if you're not balancing the tentacles on your investigator, you can start becoming accursed. When that happens, you start increasing your delirium. And if any one of your investigators max out on delirium, they go mad and Cthulhu wins the game. So it's very important that you're balancing that out. And since we already have shamblers on that location, let's go ahead and put 2 more on there. Whenever a location becomes a curse, so you have the 3 shamblers fill in the box and you pull that 4th shambler, you're going to take your shamblers and put them back on the shambler mat in their represented color. And you're going to take one of the eldritch tentacles from that location and put it in the discard mat. Then you're going to grab one from your supply and put it back into the location. The last rule I want to talk about are the Cthulhu powers. When you start your game, it's recommended that you go to the appendix of your book and whatever Cthulhu you're playing, make sure you read their powers. For the Cthulhu we have out, it says any town card within one of, I still can't pronounce the Cthulhu's name, that does not have a blue, red, or green shambler gets one from the shambler mat. So the power for this particular Cthulhu says move a green shambler to each town card in span of control where none are present. Span of control for Cthulhu is the location that the Cthulhu is and 1 card to either side. And this power, based on the appendix, would mean we would then populate a shambler in any one of these locations that doesn't have the particular colored shambler in. So this is one way where, even though this is a low level Cthulhu, it does have a very powerful ability and can cause shamblers to go accursed real quickly. Now that we got the rules clarifications out of the way, we're going to go ahead and finish setting up this game. I didn't place the tentacles for the different locations. You place 2 tentacles per location. The rules state that you're supposed to pull 1 tentacle out at a time and place it on the different locations during gameplay. At this point in the game, though, because none of the city locations have any tentacles on them, you can pull both of them out at the same time. And if you happen to pull a black one out, just put it back in and then just grab another tentacle. And this just helps you with a little bit of setup time so that you're not wasting it just pulling one out at a time. So now that these are all set up, we are good there. The next thing we need to do is place the Great Old One, the Investigator, and populate some Shamblers. We're going to use the Wheel of Madness for this. And before we start spinning, let's take a quick refresher on the pointer. The pointer has a front and back side, and both of those are going to be used during gameplay. The front has this little nodule on it, the back does not. I will most likely call that the tail during gameplay. And when the spinner lands on the line and you're not quite sure what side of the line it is on, the rules indicate you just move it slightly clockwise and define what side it's supposed to be on. You don't want to move it too much because during gameplay you're actually using the back of the pointer as well to determine which shambler you're going to populate. Also, when you spin the wheel, if you don't get a couple rotations on it, it's not considered a legal spin. Cthulhu gets mad at you and you have to spin it again. So you need to make sure you get a couple rotations on it. For this stage of the game, we are just going to place the Great Old One, our investigators, and the Shamblers. So we are just using the front of the spinner, and wherever it lands, that is where you populate the Great Old One. When you first populate the Great Old One, you flip that page card over. Now we're going to spin again for the Investigator. He's going to the store to hang out with Cthulhu. We'll spin it for, and the Historian's going to go hang out with Cthulhu. Now we need to populate some Shamblers. You populate one Shambler for every player. This is a 2-player setup, so we need to populate 2 Shamblers. And this one is going to be pointing to the blue at the park. So we will just put a blue Shambler here. And the last Shambler is going to be blue at the park. So they're just hanging out at the park, checking things out. So now the game is all set up. And we just need to determine who's going first and start spinning the Wheel of Madness. We're going to start with a detective. Before we start, you want to make sure you pay attention to the ability of your investigators. For the detective, if I get extra movement for having fear tentacles, as I pass other city locations, I can flip over the page cards as I pass them. For the historian, when cards are flipped over, she can translate cards within her span of control. So a card to the left or to the right of her, she can translate those as well. So with everything done, we're going to spin the Wheel of Madness and see what happens. So the Wheel of Madness, when you spin it, is Cthulhu's turn. You're going to resolve whatever action it landed on. All the actions are listed on the discard mat. This is the activate the matching Great Old One's power, which is move a red Shambler to each town card in span of control where one is not currently at. There are no red Shamblers anyplace. So we go ahead and pull out 3 red Shamblers and we will put them on the board. We are now going to populate tentacles in that area. As Cthulhu ramps up, you will start pulling more tentacles from the bag, but at the beginning, it's just at the starting point. The number to the right of the marker is the number of tentacles we're going to pull out. So we got a blue one, we got a red one, and our last one is another red one. So we've done those things. Now we're going to look at the back end of the spinner, the tail end, and that's going to tell us what Shambler we populate. And then we're going to move the old great one. So that was Cthulhu's turn. Now it is time for me to activate my detective. The detective gets 3 actions. However, you can spend Chaos Tentacles to get additional actions. These are very powerful in the game because they can give you additional actions, and they are colorless tentacles that can be used for any of the different mechanics in the game. So we have 3 actions of 5 actions we can choose from in phase 1 of the game. The first one is we can take advantage of the town location ability. Each location will have a different ability. Don't forget these cards are double-sided, so when you're setting up, mix them all up, flip them around, and set them up randomly. So you just got a good variety of things going on. The second action the investigator can take is collect tentacles. Tentacles are very important to this game. As you collect them and you put them on your temperance track, this will increase your abilities. So when you have none on your investigator, when you move, you can only move one location. When you banish a shambler and you pull down tentacles, you can only pull one. And when you collect tentacles, you can only collect one. As you have tentacles, this will increase by one. So if I have one greed tentacle, I can pull two. And if I have two greed tentacles, I can pull three tentacles from locations. So that's a good thing. You also use these tentacles as a resource. You'll use them to translate pages of the Necronomicon, and you will also use them to banish shamblers. So they have multiple purposes in the game. When you switch over to phase 2 of the game, you will also need to use tentacles to close the portals, and we'll talk about that more later. So that is one other action the investigator can take. The investigator can also banish shamblers and translate pages from the Necronomicon or move. When you move in this game, there are three things you need to remember in phase 1 of the game. You cannot move to or through a location where Cthulhu is at because Cthulhu is a wall during phase 1. When you move to a new location, you want to flip the card for that location for the page so you can translate it. If there is a shambler in that location, you are going to grab a tentacle for the number of shamblers and you are going to place them either on the Great Old Ones card or on the Investigator's card. This is the one time where you have to do this. That is how your tentacles can become accursed. When that happens, you're going to remove all the tentacles, place them on the Shambler's mat because you no longer have access to them. You're going to have to pull those down by banishing Shamblers, and you need to move up your delirium track. So having delirium isn't necessarily a bad thing. As you move up, you will actually gain rerolls. So at the one level, you get to reroll one of your Cthulhu dice. 2, you get to reroll 2 of your dice. 3, you get to reroll 3 of your dice. However, at any time, if any of the investigators reach above 3 and they get to basically the accursed level, you've gone mad and Cthulhu wins the game. So Cthulhu has 2 ways to win: by powering up or causing one of the investigators to go mad. You have one way to win by first solving all the pages of the Necronomicon, flipping Cthulhu over, and closing all the portals. So you have a lot of work ahead of you. So that is one of the other actions you have to take when you move. So don't forget those 3 rules. Cthulhu's a wall, flip your card, pull tentacles if there's a shambler. So now I'm going to take my investigator's actions. The first action the investigator is going to take is pull a green tentacle. The next action the investigator is going to take is move to a new location. Because we just moved in there, we'll flip the card. We will pull a tentacle because of the shambler and see what we can get. Sometimes this can be a good thing. Yes, we got 2 green tentacles now. And the last action the investigator is going to take is pulling tentacles. We're going to pull 2 red and a blue tentacle and put those on the investigator's temperance track. Now I'm going to spend one of my chaos tentacles to combat this shambler. So I'm going to get an extra action. The way combat works is you're going to roll a number of dice equal to the number of shamblers in the location. And the dice have 3 symbols on them. You've got the Cthulhu symbol, which represents 0. You have a single tentacle and a double tentacle, and that's the number of tentacles you have to spend to banish the shambler. You also have to have the same colored tentacles to banish the Shambler. And if you don't, you can use Chaos Tentacles as well. So we roll a dice, and we rolled the 0, which means we do not have to spend any tentacles to banish the Shambler. The Shambler goes into the Shambler mat. Because I have 2 red tentacles, I get to pull down 3 red tentacles. You pull down the same colored tentacles as the Shambler that you banished, and that will end my turn for the detective. Now it's going to be the historian's turn. She spins the wheel of madness. She gets the result of pulling an extra tentacle for the location. So she pulls a red, a green, a blue, and the last one, because of the action that was the result, is another green. We'll come over here. We're going to populate a green Shambler. So now this area is starting to get a little bit full on Shamblers, and we're going to move the Great Old One. So what is the historian going to do? Well, it's her first turn, so she's going to grab a green tentacle, and then she is going to move to this location. She has to get 2 tentacles because of the Shamblers in that location. She got a blue. And she gets... I can't get these out of the bag too easily. Oh, another blue. Well, that's unfortunate because there's no blues in this location. So I'm going to have her combat the green Shambler. There's 2 in the location, so we roll 2 dice. And I got the higher result. So I will use a green tentacle and one of my chaos tentacles to banish that Shambler. I do not have any rage tentacles, so I only pull down 1 tentacle from the discard mat. And that will end her turn. So now we move on to the detective. And so this is a great example of being on the line, the front of that pointer, because these aren't your typical like straight pointers. These are tentacles, a little bit more artistic. So we just move it slightly to the side, clockwise, and that's going to put it on the pull an extra tentacle. So we pulled a red tentacle, we pulled a green tentacle, pulled a blue tentacle, and now the last one, green. Oh man, I'm thinking the black tentacles are all going to come out at once. That's scary. So anyway, so we've done that. Now we come over here. We're going to populate a red Shambler, and the Great Old One's going to move over there. And I forgot to flip that card. This is the one thing I do forget the most, is flipping over these page cards. Now it's the detective's turn. Because the Great Old One is in the same location with the detective, I have to move first. He's going to move 1 right here. Because there is a Shambler in there, I have to pull a tentacle. I pulled a black tentacle. And now he's going to combat that Shambler in that location. I rolled a 2. I'm going to go ahead and use the 2 red tentacles that I have on my card, place that back on the Shambler's mat. There are no red tentacles to pull down. I do not have any special ability that lets me pull any other tentacles down, so I get nothing. So that was my second action. And my third action, since I have greed tentacles, is to pull more tentacles. So I'm going to pull these 2 red ones. Oh, I can't pull the green one because I can't force myself to go accursed. I meant to pull the blue one. Yes, one of the rules is you can't pull tentacles forcing yourself to become accursed. That will end the investigator's turn. We'll take one more spin with the historian, and then we're going to set up for phase 2 of the game. So we spin, we land on pull the chaos tentacle out, put it in the discard mat. We're going to pull 3 tentacles out. I pulled a black, and I pulled a blue, and I think I only have like 2 left. I pulled a red. Oh, there's 1 left inside here. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch this out. We're going to go ahead and say we pulled the black tentacle so that I can show Cthulhu becoming accursed. What you do when Cthulhu becomes accursed is you go ahead and just place the black tentacles on the discard mat. You're going to power up Cthulhu, and then you're going to take all of the tentacles that are on the discard mat and put them back in the bag. So that's kind of how you replenish your bag. You have to let Cthulhu power up so that you can start pulling more tentacles. I just wanted to stage that so we could have a little bit of an explanation. Now we come over here, we're going to pull a blue Shambler, and we're going to move the great old one over here. Same situation as we had before. I really wanted to pull some of these tentacles off, but now that the great old one is there, I can't. So what we're going to do, we move over 1 location. There are 3 Shamblers here. We got a fresh bag of tentacles, and we pulled a blue. Not what I wanted to have happen. So now these become accursed, so they go on the Shambler's mat. I increase the delirium for that character by 1. And we have to activate the great old one's power, which is populating blue Shamblers. We have blue here, so all we got to do is put a blue one there. So that ends the curse, but that was just the first one we pulled. We still have to pull 2 more tentacles. So we get 2 red ones. And this is why you want to do things 1 at a time, pulling them out of the bag, because things become accursed and they can just kind of start downward spiraling and crazy stuff can start happening. All right, so we've resolved our move. We're going to flip the card. Everything is done there. Now, I was going to combat the blue Shamblers that were there, but I can't because I don't have any blue tentacles, and I also don't have enough chaos tentacles in case I roll the 2, so I'm really not doing too well. Boy, that was just terrible. So I'm going to spend 1 action to pull the green tentacle, and I'm just going to move on through. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and have my detective go ahead and translate a page so you can see how that goes. When you translate a page of the Necronomicon, you need to spend tentacles equal to the one shown on the card. So this has 2 green, 1 red, and 1 blue. You can also spend chaos tentacles if you do not have enough. These will just go into the discard mat. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your page tokens from your supply, and you're going to cover up those numbers on the Necronomicon board, which is going to be 1, 2, 4, and 5. You go from left to right, and as you complete columns and rows, you will take the chaos tentacles off and place them into the discard mat. But you want to start collecting these cards, and what's going to happen is when we transition to phase 2, you are going to use the runes that are on the cards that you've collected for the number of dice you're going to roll to close the portals. Now, the maximum number of dice you can roll is 3, so you want to try to get 3 of each color. And a 2-player game, and the fact that you are translating 25 pages means you're probably going to have more than 3 of each. But this is what you're going to use them for, is rolling your dice to close the portals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stage this so that the historian has 2 red ones and that the detective has 2 green ones. And what will happen is when we translate the final page of the Necronomicon book, we immediately flip over the Great Old One. We will take the Eldritch Tentacles, if there's any on the Great Old One at that time, put them in the discard mat, pick up the power token, flip the card over, and place the power token back at the starting point. Now our goal is to close these portals, but we've weakened Cthulhu, so now we can move through the location where Cthulhu is in and we can interact with that location because Cthulhu's weak. In order to close one of the portals, first you need to be in the location that Cthulhu is at, and you need to have a tentacle that matches the color of the portal that you want to close, because you will actually use that to mark that spot. And what you're going to do is use the number of ruined cards that match for the number of dice that you're going to roll. So I'm going to say the detective has a green tentacle. He's going to try to close the one spot. We have 2 cards, so we would roll 2 dice. And what you have to do is meet or beat that value. Now, you wouldn't think 1 is that hard, but don't forget, we have zeros on these dice. It's always possible to roll 2 zeros and not be able to close it. We roll. I rolled 4, so I beat the value on the portal. You add up the total number on the dice rolled. So this is actually a 4. You will take one of your tentacles and you will close that portal. When you close the first portal, nothing changes on the game. However, when you close that second portal, what that does is it turns off this ability. So if we spin the wheel and we land on the green Cthulhu, this ability is turned off and it will no longer take place. Also, when you curse the same color, this ability won't take place. And lastly, when you close that second portal, you pull down all of that colored tentacles from the Shambler's mat and you put them in the discard mat. Your investigators still get to take advantage of the colored tentacles while they're playing the game. It just turns everything off for Cthulhu because you are now winning and you are weakening Cthulhu every time you close portals. So that's just a brief sample of play. Hopefully I got all the rules right this time. I feel I did a pretty good job. If anything is not correct, please leave me a comment and I'll do everything I can to put information in the description to update that. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Bye.